Well. Let me make sure the stream is all set up. Pull up that chat. As soon as I click to go live, I immediately just started sneezing. Allergies kicking in hard right as I start streaming. But welcome back. Welcome back. Sorry about that echo there. Yeah, welcome back. My name's Andrew. I'm one of the co-founders of Chromagolem. We're a game studio working on using AI for interesting things in new games. So that's emergent game mechanics, that's more interesting in PCs, that's some of the really cool like crafting systems you'll see in this game. We've been spending the last, it's probably been about 6 months now, just doing a lot of demos and research and building up the infrastructure for being able to make games and see what's fun with all this new technology that really hasn't been possible before. And we've had a lot of good demos and people seem to enjoy what we're building. So this game that we're working on this week is a continuation of Elixir Emporium, which is the one that people really like the demo, and we're kind of taking everything that we've learned from the previous demos and putting it all together. So let me jump on over to some Unity. We've got our game work in progress set up. We did a lot last week, and I've also done a lot off stream, and Andrew's just about ready to kind of incorporate the stuff he's been working on as well, so I'm really excited for that. And we'll get you guys up a Steam demo pretty soon. But let me show you around. Let me show you what we've been working with. So in this game, it's a well, we're still finalizing how we want the like player control to feel. Could be more of a third person. Could be more like top down. Could even be kind of first person. I don't know. We're playing around with it. But the gist of the game is you are in this town. You've got a bunch of NPCs in this town. All those NPCs are hooked up to some AI, so they've got personalities. They've got likes and dislikes. They've got knowledge they know about the world. They've got professions. They've got relationship scores both with you and other NPCs. And as you talk to them, you'll learn about them. They will generate their own quests based on all that stuff that they know. You can carry on conversations with them. We've got some kind of AI generated dialogue suggestions for you to click on that will generate dialogue for you if you just want to keep the conversation going. But you can also type whatever you want and they will respond to you, and you can just carry on that conversation that way. But it's all to kind of learn about their problem and figure out a solution for you to provide. So for example, this blacksmith here, every piece of metal he touches turns to gold, which might sound like a dream, but you can't fashion sturdy swords or plows, so he needs something that can help, and it's intentionally very open-ended. You could get him gloves, you could get him some sparkly dust to sprinkle on his metal that purifies it. You could get him maybe a new forge, maybe a new anvil, I don't know. Lots of open-ended stuff. If you have ideas, you can literally just ask him if he thinks they would be helpful. But all that is kind of a purpose for the crafting in the game, where it's pretty cool. These don't have images yet because I haven't moved over the starting items into our new item system. But basically, it's kind of like a lot of other games where you have items and you have recipes for crafting items. For example, a like stick and a blade will make a sword. That is just a recipe in the game. That's pretty standard. But every combination of items is a valid crafting recipe. So we don't have anything in the game that combines, say, like an axe and a sickle. But if you were to craft those, hey Tony, welcome to the chat. I'm just giving a little rundown of what we're working on. We craft an axe and a sickle together. We get a harvest axe, so it kind of combines the. We got a wood cutting stat on the axe, but nothing on the sickle. But it incorporates all the knowledge of both into a new item. We get a versatile tool that chops wood and harvests crops efficiently. So those stats, kind of hand wavy right now. They don't do a lot for you, but if you were talking to an NPC who needed something to help with his harvests, or maybe there's a bunch of trees sprouting up in his fields, and something like this would be really good for both cutting down the trees and harvesting. Might be really cool. We've also got image generation for each of these set up, so that's pretty cool. It's kind of fun to see what all the items make. And once you've crafted a specific combination of two items, that creates a recipe and that item in the game. So from then on, if you craft the same thing, you're always going to get that. You can browse through all those recipes in your codex of recipes that we've got here. I guess I need to update the images in it, though. We built that last week or the week before when we didn't have image generation yet. But I kind of love just combining stuff and seeing what you get. Let's see what we get here with a saw and a sickle, I think, or a scythe. So we got a harvester's friend. Throw that on. Maybe we do an acorn and a crucible. And so all these items are fun, and you can give them directly to NPCs, but you can also use them as tools in the world. So if we were to take our harvest axe or our harvester's friend, and maybe, well, I broke our our axe, but if we take a saw, for example, if you were to use a saw on a tree, let's go find a tree somewhere. So the first time that you use any item on any object, it's going to do kind of the same thing as crafting, combining items does. It's going to ask some AI like, hey, what do you get when you use this item on this tree? And then it's going to save that recipe again. So anytime now you use a saw on an oak tree, you're always going to get oak planks. So if you have a recipe that needs oak planks, now you know how to get them, and so on. But if you were to use maybe a harvest axe, you might also get oak planks. You might get something else. Every item to object recipe is going to be unique, and this time you get oak logs. So if you want logs or planks, those are just going to get added straight to your inventory. They also generate the like flavor text and sometimes stats and sometimes other stuff. If we were to take our harvester's friend, let's do one more. But you'll see that right now this UI says use hands on tree. I've kind of mocked up the UI of what we'll build on stream this week. So previously I literally just said oak tree. And so what I think we'll do is we are going to put the image of the tool that we're using on the left side of this tooltip, and then we'll put the image of the item that you get from using that tool on that object on the right side. So if we have this guy selected, we would see that guy on the left side, and we'd see oak logs on the right side. If we had this guy selected, we'd see that guy on the left side, and we'd see, also oak logs, but the saw, we'd see oak planks on the right side, basically. And if we don't know what item yet we'd get, we're going to get that little codex book. That's just going to tell the player, like, hey, you haven't done this combination yet. You'll figure it out if you do it. So we'll probably attach some like XP drops and stuff to that later, so you can kind of explore and adventure and discover new recipes that way. But that's kind of the gist. That's really, really simple. And so I've also mocked up, let's see here. We've got extended actions. that I can turn on. And so in the case that maybe you have a couple items on your hotbar that you might want to use on this tree, but you don't have them selected, if you were to hover over the tree, you could see a list of all the valid tools on this tree, maybe some other actions like walk here, and it would show little icons for what each of those tools will give you on that tree. I think that'll be nicer on its own, just to be able to like very easily inspect an object and see like of all the tools that you have, what would you get from that object. But I also think it'll be really cool when we flesh out some of the like skills and spells and stuff that we are kind of prototyping in here. I started on some skills, just kind of, this is more of a information for the player rather than functionality of like what you unlock at each skill level. We'll see if this makes it in, but the idea is basically providing these individual skills as a way to let players decide what they want to do in this world, because it is so open-ended with how you talk to NPCs. If you wanted to come to this town and just be like a farmer, you could do that. Just go out and maybe forage some seeds, and then we've got a farming plot over here that's kind of a placeholder, but forage some seeds, plant some crops, manage those crops, maybe like sell them to people in town. If there's a chef in town, maybe sell them to him because he might pay more. If there's not a chef in town, maybe you also learn some cooking. So you can sell like cooked food to people in town. And that could be like the way you play this game, because you can build these relationships with NPCs. You can kind of do whatever you want. And there's a nice fine line there of letting the player do whatever they want and giving them like a line to walk, or like an experience that you promise them. So I mostly just added in some of these skills for just providing a way to play. Like a great example that of stuff that probably won't make it in the game is this thieving skill. If you click on it, you get some pretty standard stuff at the beginning. You get like lock picking. So obviously we're going to do some interiors to these houses. These are all pretty placeholders right now. But pickpocketing, all these NPCs have inventories, so might make sense that you would want to pick some pockets and have a chance to be successful or not and risk your relationship with that NPC. So there's like some pros and cons there. But then we get into some like absolutely ridiculous things, like you walk over to Braun and you're like, hey man, I'm going to burn down your house if you don't give me X, Y, and Z item. Or you abduct him and hold him for ransom or blackmail him or whatever. I do think that blackmail could be an interesting mechanic in the way that we've set up our NPCs' knowledge bases, because they'll all have access to like facts about the world, and they'll also have conversation facts that they draw from like with you. So there's going to be stuff that some NPCs know and some NPCs don't know. So there might be some fun ways to take advantage of that if you like tell this guy a secret or something. And I don't know, we'll play around with that. This is more of just a little fun placeholder. But all that was to say, a lot of these might unlock some skills which you might see in we're still figuring out how we want to maybe like incorporate the actual interaction with the world from those skills. But if you were to go to a tree or something and you knew a spell that was like fireball or something, it would probably be listed in these extended actions that way. So you wouldn't need to like go open up your spell book, click fireball, click on the tree. You might be able to just do something a little nicer. And this is all very hand wavy anyway, so maybe we just get into some code. I'm happy to brainstorm on spells and skills and XP and progression and all that jazz. if anybody has any questions in the chat, but might just get into some code. And yeah. So we'll take a look at our mouse info tooltip. That's the guy. That's the guy right there that shows up every time you hover over any object in the world. We're just using like mouse enter, whatever the Unity callback is for that. So what we want to do first, let's take out the extended actions. All we're going to do is populate this left-hand side with whatever tool is selected on our hotbar, and we'll populate the right-hand side with either this book or whatever item will result from using that tool. We'll also want to put the tool name in here. We already populate the object name here, so that should be pretty easy. The question is, where do we set all this? I forget. I've gone ahead and just threw in a blank script that started on right before the stream, and I was like, you know what, probably be nicer to just start it when I start the stream instead of starting in the middle of something. Let's go ahead and let's see. So I guess we can trace back because we know UI references has a reference to our target info bar. Right, it's on the generic interactable world objects. On mouse enter, we set the tooltip data with whatever object we're mousing over. So in here, where we set mouse tooltip information for a generic interactable entity, that's where we want to set all this data. But I am realizing that since we went the polymorphic route with all of this, we need to think through the flow here, where we have generic interactable entity is the parent to all three of our types of interactable things right now. So we have interactable objects like this tree, and those trigger like a harvest action. So that's how you get the logs and so on. We also have interactable workstations. So those usually trigger panels to open that you interact with stuff that way. We also have interactable NPCs. So all three of those are going to have tooltips that are similar, but we probably also want to change the text of like use hands on. We probably only want use blank on when it's a generic interactable object like a tree. For a workstation, we might want to just say like use anvil. And for an NPC, we might want to say like talk to brown. So we'll bake all that in as well. So mouse tooltip name text. We have that on our target info bar controller. We're going to take all that out and we're going to move it into our new mouse info tooltip controller and just call like load data here. So we'll say public void load interactable data. Let's not do all that yet. But we also want to double check we have all the references and stuff that we want. Let's just fill all that out real fast, and we'll skip over the extended actions for now, just to make things simpler. We can add it in later. So the pieces that we have are this left tool sprite, tool image, we've got our output item image. We have our action text, I suppose. And let's call this our like target name text. So all of this, we should be able to set all these. The only thing I'm wondering is if we're passing in a generic interactable entity, if we'll be able to tell whether it was a generic interactable NPC, panel, trigger, or whatever. So we might want to move that up if we, let's do this. Close all but this. In our target info bar controller, do we know what's being hovered there? No, it's still an entity, so it doesn't help to like hoist it up to here and do an if then for each case. So we might as well just do it in here. And we might be able to just say, like do a if is. I think that's valid C#. Let's say branch on whether generic interactable entity is a generic interactable world object. I just want to see what it auto-completes to. Yeah, if is. So that's how we will probably end up doing it. These aren't valid classes. I just wanted to see what it auto-completed to. So there's going to be similarities, obviously, but for the action text specifically, and probably like the output sprite, we might need to do things slightly differently. And our third one is actually generic interactable panel trigger. Cool. So let's go ahead and up here we can, instead of doing this guy, we can say mouse info, or I guess we probably want a reference to our mouse info tooltip controller that we're building. We'll just call it that, the greatest name ever. And we'll just kind of curry on through the object we're working with instead of setting our mouse text manually. So if we delete that, we make sure we don't have any other errors. Cool, so that should be all the references to just the mouse tooltip. Hopefully that's target name text on, yeah, the interaction bar. Okay, cool. So in here, all we have to do is just set the data. So we've got our interactable object. We can say, let's leave action text for our loop, but we'll say target name text dot text is equal to interactable object dot get display name. Our tool image dot sprite, we're going to have to get off of our player database, I believe. Maybe off our tool belt. Do we have a method for like active item? Yeah, we do. Cool. So we can just go ahead and say player database dot instance dot toolbelt dot get active item dot image. Perfect, except for when active item is null. So we'll do that. Get rid of this. Our output image, we are going to need to query the recipe database to see if we have something for using that item on a world object. And I think we'll only do that here. So one question is, This format works well for hovering over a tree. You see your axe, you see the logs. If you hover over a person and it says talk to blank, should we show anything here and should we show anything here? Like we could show a speech bubble here. It's just kind of a little at a glance icon. Probably don't need to show anything here because you're not getting anything. So we could just disable that output container. Don't think that would be weird. So maybe we'll handle the output image in this branch as well. So I guess we can get started. On action text, we are going to say, let's grab our current formatting. So we do this. And all we want to do is swap in the active tool name here. So let's do that this way. Every week I put my microphone in front of my keyboard, shove my keyboard back, so I can actually talk into it. And every week I make so many silly typing mistakes, and I'm like, I hope it doesn't look like I can't type. I swear it's because my microphone's in the way of my keyboard. So here we can say if active tool is not null, we want to do it this way instead of doing the not equals because we overload the is null a little bit to check item names. And then here we can just say active tool dot image. And then in here, I forget the syntax for, what is that called? Encapsulation? No. Inserting in the item text here. Something like, let's just do it the easy way. It's like, I'll just look it up. Let's do it for here. What is that word? Well, this is how we do it, but interpolation, that's the word. Alright, so it's $sign on the outside, and then curly braces. And yeah, I guess if there's not an active tool, what we're going to do is say string tool name is equal to, let's do active tool is null, and then we'll say bare hands is our tool that gets used for all the AI when you don't have an item selected. So we'll use that here. We probably should hoist that up into some setting somewhere and centralize it. But what we can do is just throw in tool name here. And we don't need all that because it's on the next line. Cool. So for talking to NPCs, we can say action text dot text is equal to talk to. Let's do that sort of formatting. And then for workstations that toggle a panel, So example of that is the stash. There's statues that you can pray at. There's going to be cooking appliances. So if we hover over the stash, I guess we can just say like use stash or use anvil, use forge. But for statues, maybe we want to let each workstation define its own like verb. So the statue could say like pray at. Anvil could be like smith at or something. But for now, let's just say action text is equal to use. And let's take a look at generic interactable panel trigger. And yeah, it'd be super easy to let them define their own verb. So we will say public string use verb is equal to use. And so now all we need to do is, instead of this, we say interactable object as panel trigger.use verb use. And I kind of want to, yeah, just add a little dot on the end. So this will cast it back to our panel trigger. In order to get this, I guess we should do that. So if it isn't a panel trigger, which it should always be because of this case, but you never know. Solar flares and whatnot, you know. It'll at least default to use dot. Okay. So let's add in some comments here. We'll say action text for each of these. And we've got our tool image. We want our output image handled. And output image, we handle differently in each of these. I guess we technically handle the tool image differently as well, because you're not actually going to be using your tool on the panels either. So let's do the same thing over here and say public sprite use image. Be nice to give that a default. And I actually don't know the difference between having that as a sprite or an image, because we are, I think we actually want sprite. Image is the component. So here, let's bring that guy in here. For our panel trigger, we'll have our tool image set to use image. And maybe we want to only do this once. And that way we can say if panel trigger is not null, then we do all this without needing all the casting everywhere. And I guess, yeah, we don't even need the safe syntax. Alright, so that now lets us, let's actually, 1 second, let's do this. So if it has an image set, then we'll set it there. But that lets us set, for example, if we go to this anvil, we can set a use image of hammer, of blacksmith, of craft, something. Yeah, that'll work. And then just for testing, let's say Smith. At. And so if there's not an image set, then we're going to, should we disable it or have a default? There's not really a generic default for using things, but maybe we can just use the hand, I guess. So let's say public sprite default use sprite, and we're also going to want a default talk to sprite in a moment. But here now we can at least say tool image dot sprite is default workstation use sprite. So before we forget, let's go set that as well. Oh, we haven't set any of these. Good thing. All right, so tool image, output image, target name text, tool text. Let's rename that actually to action text. And then let's do our default workstation to be hand. Yeah. And default talk to be speech. Social. That'll work. All these images we're gonna swap out eventually anyway. I feel like we are still deep in the like systems development and getting things working, getting things feeling good, and then I feel like we're gonna have a lot of work in the vibe department and kind of crafting more of how things look just as a cohesive whole. So all these sprites need to match each other, and different lighting effects and whatever the story we want to tell is, all those kind of go hand in hand, but they're kind of built on top of all these systems that we're building now. Cool, so that'll give us our image on panel triggers, which are our workstations. So for NPCs, we're just going to use the default talk to sprite. We could give them like little avatars or something, but I think that's a little overkill for now. Are we missing anything? Tool image, output image is what we're missing. So each of these will handle it slightly differently, although these two are going to be the same. So we will say disable the output image. Just disabling the output image isn't going to do anything. We actually want to disable the output container. So we need one more reference to that. So here, just set enabled false. Same down here. If you're not getting anything back from the action, we shouldn't have a little blank box. I guess we could have a blank box, but might as well just not have a box at all. Let's set that reference real fast. So output image container is this guy. But the cool one, this guy, we want to first set it active in case it's been disabled from other things. Or I guess finally set it active. But we want to look up the recipe for using an object with a tool. So let's go look at our recipe database real fast, see if we've got method already for that. Actually, do we use let's look at our interactable object, generic interactable object. So when we interact, get tool object result from the interactable object database. That's what we're going to use. So it returns null or the name of an object, right? Yeah. So that's easy enough. All we're going to do is, if it's null, show that book. And if we have the name of an object, just look up the object by name, show its image. Just got to remember where we were now. Not in there. We were working here. So, with our active tool used on interactable object dot get display name, if result for this interaction is equal to null, then we want to show the book. So again, up here we'll have public sprite default codex sprite. Otherwise, we can look up the item and show its image. Perfect. But we also want to yeah. I mean, we shouldn't ever get a null here. If we did, if this result item ever was null, there's a much bigger problem. So I actually want to remove this so we get errors in our console and see what that's happening instead of just silencing it. Cool. So this should all work. Everything should be perfect and it should work on the first try. Let's add our book and let's test all three, making sure it works perfectly. So we immediately got an error, but it's just a Unity error. It's not my fault. Don't worry about it. If we test the tree first, oh, you know what? We get errors. And I think it's because, yeah, we didn't set this reference, and also our tooltip isn't showing at all, which I noticed last time we were testing, so let's do a little investigation. So this guy needs a tooltip controller. I wonder if this is the script where we are, yeah, showing and hiding it. Yeah. So mouse info tooltip sets active, and we want to do that and then load in the data, I think, right? Maybe not. Let's try this first. Let's try this once more. That might have been enough to just set that reference. Yeah, now we have tooltips. So, use bare hands on oak tree. Bare hands does not have an image. It is actually an item in the game, but it actually doesn't have an image. So that might work. We'll test that in a sec when we craft an item and check it out. But the text is correct. The oak tree text is correct, and the book is correct. But obviously all of that is exactly what we had before writing all this code. So let's test the other two. So if we come over here, we get Smith at Anvil with the workstation's icon and action text. That is correct. So that's cool. And also talking to an NPC, now we get talk to and the social icon. So that's correct as well. But there's a little bit more to test with our stuff over here. If we do an axe and some scissors, craft up an item that has an image, we want to make sure that that image gets shown on the left side when it's the selected tool. So we got a craftsman's hatchet, pretty neat. So now it says use craftsman's hatchet on. It's got the image, so that's pretty cool. We still need to tweak some like truncation or scaling or something. But we have the book because there's nothing that we know we'll get. We know we have to do that research. We're getting finely cut oak logs, and now it shows that we get finely cut oak logs. That's pretty cool. So if we make another tool, we should be able to switch between them as well. So we've also got a forge hammer, which sends it back to the book icon, which is good. We get splintered oak wood. The icon is set correctly. And you can switch between them. Obviously, I'm taking my mouse off because we're not updating the tooltip when we are changing our selected icon. So looks like everything we wrote is perfect and worked on the first try, but let's also add that to whenever you change the selected tool. We probably want to detect if the tooltip is open, and if so, update it with whatever the new tool is, I guess. I don't know if we want to do that actually, because in order to do that, we'll need to store what the tooltip, the object it's interacting with. I guess we could do that. I mean, it's kind of a... We definitely don't want to have to mouse out, change your tool, and mouse back in. So that's what we're going to have to do, I think. But it's nice to see that that all works. So how we want to do this, we've got our generic world object. What we could do, on mouse enter, we are showing the tooltip. On mouse exit, we are exiting the tooltip. Does set mouse tooltip show it? It does show it. So the two routes we could take are, one, we store the object being hovered over in probably in here in the generic interactable world object, because we'll be able to unset it with on mouse exit. And then if we change our active item with our tool belt controller, then we can trigger an update on that to re-show a new tooltip if it's open. It's pretty janky. Alternatively, what we could do is on mouse enter instead of setting it once at the beginning as soon as it enters and then unsetting it at the end. We could enter into some sort of loop here, like a coroutine that constantly checks to see if your tool is still the same, if the object is still the same, and then updates things if they're not. That would probably be nicer for, like, good example later, if you harvest some wheat or something and it consumes the actual object of wheat. we will need to make sure that the tooltip gets closed, which we can do. But if we edit the object, like you have a little tree sapling and you use some bone meal on it or something, and it modifies the object enough that it would be a new object, but we would still want to see a tooltip for the new object, we'd get into a similar funky spot where we are hiding the current tooltip on the old object as it's being destroyed and trying to manually trigger the tooltip on the new object. Nah, I think it's all fine. This is way too complicated for what it needs to be. What we will do is choke on our water, apparently. Okay, I'm still alive. Just gonna dig around and think about it for a second. Because we do also have the same exact problem on our hotbar, like the little like the interaction bar above our hotbar. So if we put axe and hammer here, if we chop it with the axe, we'll eventually switch over to logs, shade tree logs. But if we switch our tool here while still interacting, Helmet of Superiority is just a null item. That is indicative of the problem here, where you need to basically mouse out, mouse back in. You need to re-interact to trigger with the new thing. So we kind of need some sort of like callback that we can register on when the active tool changes. Run some logic. So re-trigger harvesting, re-trigger tooltips, re-trigger drawing this guy. But I also hate setting up those sort of callbacks because they just make the code so complicated, hard to follow because the code is just everywhere. What I was planning on doing in this case was to just, anytime you updated your tool, it interrupted your harvest as a solution there. Oh, I see. These are coming from me mousing over because we look up the recipe every time we show the tooltip. That's fine. I mean, I guess maybe we move on to the extended actions, because it might also just solve itself that way, because I mean, the case where you would be scrolling through to get the tool that you want is because you want to use a different tool that's not selected, and if we already have UI to do that, it's less important to spend time on getting it working in this case as well if we have an alternative. So, seems fine. Let's get things back to, let's make sure it still works with that disabled, but I want to check in what we have to get, and then we can move on to the extended actions. So tooltip, yes. Okay, cool. So let's say rig up new interactions tooltip. Coolio. Easy peas. Alrighty, now this guy. And all we're gonna do here, I believe, is we're gonna loop through all of our toolbar, uniqueify them, and then for all those unique tools, we will show kind of the same sort of row. And then we might also have some actions at the bottom with some custom logic or something. But I think all we, like interaction wise, this will show up when you right click. So rather than the tooltip following your mouse, if you right click on an object, this will pin in place. So your mouse will be here. It'll pin, and then you can go and click on one of these. And I think all we need to do there is basically just switch your selected tool to that and then trigger the run and go interact with method on the object. That should be fine. So let's get a prefab going for this guy. We'll throw him in our interactable objects. No, let's put it back in the GUI folder. So this guy is going to have a lot of the same logic as this. Oof. Hold up. Nested prefabs are such a pain. Apply. Okay. Definitely going to get rid of the prefab on our HUD canvas. It was just so we could share it across multiple scenes, but it's caused so many issues just because of the way Unity nests stuff. Alright, these are still bold, which means they didn't apply. Yeah. Alright, what do you want? This guy? Why are you unapplied here? Here's what we're gonna do. What happens if we just YOLO it? This guy still needs to be a tooltip though, or a prefab. Okay, maybe we, can we even undo that? Okay, we can. Yeah, we can just do it manually, I suppose. We go in and set all these again. Tool image. Tool text. Which we renamed to action text. Target text. Output image. output image container. Workstation, we used hand. Talk to sprite, we used social. Codec sprite, we used book. Nice. Easy peas. Now apply these changes. Okay, you've done. So in here, now we create another prefab here. We open that up. Alright. So let's say alternate interaction trigger controller or menu controller. So we'll just need a load method on that and then like an on click, because what we'll do is probably add a button and then register that button to on click on this guy. So what we've got are a lot of the same things. We have public sprite tool image, public we can just save the tool, I suppose. Maybe we don't need it, but YOLO. Let's put them up top. Public, what is our tool text? It's just going to be like use hammer. We don't need the actual target. Text mesh pro UGI action text. Let's rename that guy as well. My lights are flickering. And public sprite output image. Cool. So we want public void load data, and that will receive a tool, and it should probably also receive the actual object. So we don't have to store it somewhere. So let's do this. Because we'll want to trigger like moving to this entity's transform and queuing up an interaction and stuff. But we'll figure that out. So let's also have a public void on click menu item, which will do it. So over here, throw that guy in, on click menu item. I'm realizing we're also going to want public game object output container for the same like NPC and workstations where we're going to disable that. So let's set those real fast. We've got our tool image. Oh, right, not a sprite. Image from UI. Alright, let's hit those. Image, action text, output container, output image. Cool. This is set. So what we want to do is when we load the data, we set tool image.sprite set to the tool icon. We set action text. What's our item display name? What do we got here? item name. That's it. Because fun fact, you can't use name as a property because it conflicts with the Unity name, which is just the name of the file. Tool.item name. Do we want the ... Probably not. But we do want color. Cool. We want to say if entity is generic interactable world object, then we can look up output, recipe, etc. Otherwise, we're just going to disable output container because you don't get anything from workstations or NPCs. So we will say output container.setActive true, and let's look up what we get here. That is string received item name is equal to object or interactable object database dot instance dot look dot recipe dot what get tool object result. So our tool name and our object name. So if received item name is not equal to null, then we yes. What's our get item method again? Find item, probably. Find item. Find item, and otherwise we'll show that book sprite, which we should also probably move to somewhere more centralized so we're not setting it on all these prefabs and needing to update them all if we ever change it, which we will. But we can just stick it here as well. Let's see, codex, default codex sprite. Cool. I think that's everything. We don't have interaction done, obviously, so let's just make sure it works. Triggering using tool. Oh, right, we're not storing the tool. Let's say public. Cool. So we'll just check our console, make sure that works. But if we have these references, set this guy real fast. That should be good to go. And then all we need to do is back up in the actual tool tip handler. We're going to loop over our hotbar and add in any other items that we don't, that are valid, I guess, which will be all of them right now. It's mildly concerning that these are all still bold. with no prefab changes. Just do this. That's suspicious. Alrighty, so back in here, we, I guess, only want to show these other actions for objects, because we don't want to use hands, use axe, use hammer, blah 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 on NPCs that we're talking to, or panels. We probably want walk here for all of them. So maybe what we're gonna do is yeah, I also didn't really think through how this will work when tool is null for things like walking to a place, but maybe we can come back to that. It's fine. But here, when we set the mouse tooltip information and we show it, we load in the interactable data. We're also going to want to show extended actions for all other tool belt options. What a name. And then we'll do that just for generic interactable world objects. And let's also have a public void hide extended actions that we can call for the others. Since we're reusing the tooltip, we don't want to show it for this and then hover over something else and it'll still be active. But this also gives us a nice little interface for if we want extended actions for NPCs later. You just replace this line with whatever function does your NPC actions. Alrighty, so for this we're going to need public game object extended actions container, reference to that bad boy. We also want public game object prefab alternate interaction trigger row. Sure. So for this guy, all we do is set active false. For this guy at the end, we will set active true. But until then, all we're going to do is say list string item names is equal to new list string of our data tool. Wait, this is wrong. Right. I actually think we're going to do this in the function itself. Make it even bigger instead of making the class more complex. We'll just make the method more complex. So here, and I guess we could just grab item active tool that way. It's fine. Alright, forget everything I said. Here, we will just default it to this guy. My face is so itchy. Need more water. Alrighty, so that gives us a starting array that already has the row that we've shown for our active item, but we can now loop over all other items on the tool belt. We will add them to item names, And if we are adding them, they're not already a duplicate, then we will initialize or instantiate this prefab up here, and we'll load the data with that tool. Easy peas. So how do we want to get our tool belt objects? Tool belt inventory. I guess we could just add a like list of items. Let's do that. Let's say public list item list. And all we're gonna do here is return slots dot map item, however, select. That's it. Cool, easy peas. So over yonder in get items or item list. What did I just add? Tool belt controller. Oh, it's in the tool, right. Tool belt inventory. Yeah, I guess we could go into the inventory. It's pretty code smelly. Is it private? Toolbar controller. Oh, it is. Internal. YOLO. Alright, that gives us all the items on our tool belt right now. So we say if item names dot contains item dot display item name, then we do nothing. Skill. Otherwise, so I guess we probably just, you know, use logic here. Otherwise, we add it to our list of scene items, and then we instantiate that guy. So that'll add it to our extended actions container. Then we're gonna get the component, load data with item, and it's not quite right. I think we're gonna need to pass this guy through, which is fine. So interactable object, now we pass through the object that we're drawing this tooltip for, and we can use it here. Actable object. And what did we call? Alternate interaction trigger menu controller. Alternate interaction trigger menu controller. Cool. That will load the data. The button will already be set up. Should work? Question mark. We're calling that just on objects, and then we are setting it active. Seems fine to me. One way to find out, I guess. So let's disable that guy. Let's go in the prefab and make sure that all these are set in the actual prefab. They are. Alrighty. So when we hover over an object with nothing on our hotbar, we should get an error, obviously. Oh, yikes. Alright. Cool. So, right. I need to go work through this guy sometime. Pretty sure the fix is to do this, because this trigger, this is overriding our is null. But I feel like that's a logic change, potentially. So I just want to think it through some more. But let's see here. Here, show extended actions for each item in the item list. Let's go ahead and bisect the logic real fast between setting up the rows and initializing the rows. Let's do this. So I don't expect to get an error here, because I imagine the error is probably in our load data, but I just want to double check. Might be higher up. It is higher up. Okay. So I don't think it can be higher up than that, right? Did we change something else? I'll take a look in a sec. Hide extended actions. Okay, so that's fine. Oh, right, you know what it is? Let's call this again in our item list method. Item in this slot is not equal to null. We want is null, because we can't actually compare items to null with the not equals, because, you know, what we saw. You know, maybe we... It's this operator here. So our cases are A is B, A is not equal to B, but they're both set, A is null, B is null. Those are the four possible things that can happen. These are the two throwing errors right now, because obviously you can't do a.item name when A is null. This should return false. This should return true. When A is null, what should this return? It should only return true if B is also null, right? And likewise, if both of them are null, alright, I guess. Yeah, so that returns false. It's a little weird because this is the not equals operator. Let's see. So if they're both null, then it is false because they are equal. If A is null, it'll return flip in the brain. Well, let's carve away at the edges. So this case, if we do our null checks up here, we know A and B are not null. and therefore both of these cases are handled here with the core operator, and we don't need to mess with them. So what we need to check is if A is null and B is null, then we return false because they are equal. So that covers that case. And now we have these two cases, which in either case, if A is null or if B is null, we know that the opposite one is not null because this would have triggered. So now we can say if A is null, then return true. If B is null, also return true. Because A would be null, B would not be null, they would not be equal, therefore true. B would be null, A would not be null, they are not equal, therefore true. Alright. I've put off refactoring that method so many times, but it is the reason we have blah is null everywhere with this syntax instead of just saying blah null like we should be able to do. This should be logically correct. If it's not, things will blow up and I'm sure I'll remember it. Hopefully. But cool. That should no longer bane our existence. So, cases like this, we can now say not equal to null. Wow. And all these other places that I imagine are deep down in the code. So let's run this. Let's see if we still get the error that we got. We uncommented the line that avoided the error. So no error now. Cool, cool, cool. Right, but we didn't set the reference. Extended actions controller on this guy. Extended actions container, I mean, and then we also want this alternate interaction prefab, which let's go make sure, yeah, it's all set. All right, let's try this again. Okay, oh right, we need to destroy all the children that already exist in this container. What's happening is it's showing it, but it's not adding anything, but therefore it's just going to show the stuff that's already there. But nicely enough, it doesn't show it on our work stations. Is that the word? Yeah, I'm going crazy. Both our Anvil and our NPCs don't show it, but objects do, and obviously we're only going to show it, I think, when you right click. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see how big it gets when we show 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 items. But cool. Let's modify that to 1. Clear all the existing rows. Cool. And then we can go ahead and now let's load the data. So those rows should actually have the real data. And we will test that. It should be 0 rows at the start, but then we're going to craft some items and put them on our hotbar. See what we get. Alright, 0 rows. Cool. If we do axe and hammer, we now get axe and use hammer. Very cool. They don't have images, obviously, but let's scissors and scythe. And then let's also throw like, so we got our harvest blade. Let's do an axe as well. We've got plenty of axes apparently. And then we'll throw our scythe on as well. Harvest axe. Sure, we can just load it on up. And a bucket. Cool. So when we show this, we now have all the icons. Cool. If we use our harvest blade on it, they all say codex is the output because we need to research what happens when you use that item on it. Now we get refined oak wood. Right, the active one is at the top. That makes some sense. But if we move over to scissors, now the active one is down lower. If we use our axe, we broke something. And I think it's because we did it at the right time. Interactable data. The result item had been created, but it didn't have an image yet. So that's something we'll work on another day, I think. Not really related here, just a issue with the system in general, how we're crafting stuff. Okay, so we can craft stuff. Let's see, scissors once more. And let's make another item real fast. I'd love to have more items on the list with actual images so it doesn't look quite as terrible. Alchemist shears, sure, we'll use them. And theoretically, as the player, you might be running around in the world, and I think it would be cool to be able to look at an object and be like, hey, have I figured out all the stuff I can get from that? So you won't see this full list by default, I think. I think that'd be a little too overwhelming. But if you right click on it, you should be able to see all the stuff pop out. So let's do one more for a bucket. I guess we can just fill up the whole thing. We need bucket, we need hammer. We got our bucket of sap. Cool, cool, cool. Let's use our hammer. Scythe, harvest axe, and fishing rod. Is this our harvest axe? Yes, it is. Inventory is filling up nicely, I think. The images really kind of complete things, I think. It's going to look so much nicer when they're all images instead of kind of these starting items that have placeholder text. Entangled branch, that's a cool image. A branch that became entangled with the line, surprisingly without any fish. I guess that makes sense. Alright, so now when you hover over this guy, the images are really small, but that might be fine. Might want to increase them a little bit. They're more like icons almost instead of the actual images that are like proper art and stuff. We could probably increase it a little bit. I don't want it to be a huge tooltip, especially if we start adding more things below, like walk here, or like the spells that you might want to cast on this object. So this might be fine for now. It'll fill out a little bit nicer also, and we don't have all these white squares on the left for our tools, but they just don't have images right now because they're the starting items. But I think this all works. Let's go make sure that they're not like showing with other guys. Let's make sure we can still interact. Cool and cool. Yeah, and so over on this tree, which has different recipes, they're all unknown. So you'd come over, research it a little bit, get some XP drops when you discover a new thing, and so on. So, okay, this is working. I think it's a little nicer to present this info to the player so they don't have to go through and manually harvest with each of their tools and figure out, oh right, did that have something? Did this have something? or like open up their codex. We don't have the tab for it yet, but for all the objects that you've interacted with, will show what item you get when you're using each tool on it. But you don't have to go through all that digging around in like text heavy windows when you can just see it, whatever you're interacting with. Like, if you go over here, you got bushes, you got birch trees, you got this tree of creation, you've got maple trees, pine trees, lots of stuff. Herbs are going to populate later. You know, there's water, there's campfires, there's lots more stuff being added. So it gets pretty complex pretty fast. Cool. So I think the last thing that we want to do with this tooltip is we only want to show this guy when you right click. And right now the tooltip follows your cursor when you're hovering around, which looks really nice when it's small like that. But also when you right click, I want to pin it in place so you can then click on whatever object or option you want. Maybe we'll do a little highlight effect when you hover over them or something. But I guess we also need to do the actual interaction as well. So when you click on use axe on tree, it switches to axe and runs over to the tree and uses it. I'm going to take a quick bathroom break, but when we get back, we will set up maybe the interactions first so they're actually useful, and then we can do the pinning and more of the polished stuff. But I will be right back. Thanks for tuning in. Wow. Alrighty, where were we? I think we were setting up interaction when you click on one of these, so it actually does something, anything at all. we added that debug statement just to make sure we've got all the data set and saved correctly. So let's go. Let's go in and test that. Well, I guess we can't test that because we can't actually click on the things until we pin the tooltip in place. So let's do that first. So what we want to do, I think the cleanest way to do this is to have a void update, or just an update method, I suppose. And in here, we'll check to see if the right mouse button is clicked. Because I don't think that update will run when the tooltip is not being shown, because the object will be disabled. So what we can say is if input.get key down or get mouse button down, yeah. And then right click is mouse button 1, I think. So if mouse button down, on the frame that you right click, we're going to we need to find where the mouse info tooltip's position is set, because we don't want to conflict with that. Okay. So we could move this position. Excuse me. We could move this position control down into the tooltip controller, or we could expose some sort of like is pinned flag on the tooltip controller and check that here. I think the thing that makes the most sense is just to move the logic down into it. So we are going to take this. Let's close all but this and reopen our mouse input tooltip controller. That's target, yeah, this guy. So here is actually where we will just update the position normally. And we'll no longer need this guy. So we will get rid of both references to him there and here. And so is mouse over. I think we'll probably be able to get rid of that as well. But let's just peel away the layers because we no longer need to call this. So we actually get rid of the update in our info bar controller, which was really just handling the position of the tooltip. So is mouse over. We are just updating it and never using it. So let's delete these and also this, and then we'll make sure we don't get a build error somewhere else that might be using this, but I think we're probably fine to get rid of it. Looks good to me. Alright. Making progress. So show mouse tooltip is just going to set it active now, which now its own update method is going to handle its own positioning. So in here, we will update our positioning, But we now want private bool tooltip is pinned, or just is pinned, I suppose. Let's go ahead and I think that's fine. There's some edge cases that we probably need to deal with later, but we'll come back to that once I've written a little code and it's a little easier to explain with. So what we'll say is if is pinned, then we will set our position. Otherwise, if it is pinned, then we will do pin stuff. And so all our get mouse button down is doing is setting is pinned to true. And then we'll need to reset is pinned to false when the mouse leaves this tooltip. So I think we can probably do that with I pointer exit. Probably. And then we'll probably also want to like destroy the tool or hide the tooltip and stuff here, but we will just have a debug here of on pointer exit triggered correctly, just to make sure that things are happening the way I think they do. But here, if the tooltip is pinned, then it doesn't need to move. Although, we should actually steal this for in here. Potentially. We'll see how it feels, but I was worried that when you pinned it, your mouse might be so close to the edge that it might be a little weird, because your mouse is basically centered at this bottom left corner. When you right click to pin, it expands out this way, but if you were to move your mouse at all to the left, it would leave. So maybe moving the tooltip just slightly to the left so you know that you're over it and you have a little bit more wiggle room. Would be nicer. I don't know that we want that, but let's just see how it feels. We can move it around however we want. But here, it's pinned. We don't need to do anything at all. This should work. But I'm going to go ahead and just say is pinned here. We want it to be true, of course, but I want, while we test it, to be able to right click to toggle between pinned and not pinned. I guess it might be nice to be able to toggle it normally. So let's put a few things on our bar. Axe and hammer, cool, cool, cool. We have axe and hammer there. So when we right click, it pins in place in the wrong direction, but it does pin in place. And when we right click again, it comes back to our cursor, which is nice. Alright, so we actually want it to go to the left, whoopsies. And we can keep it the same position. Let's test that out real fast. But the other thing is we want to say extended actions container.setActive is pinned. So that'll complete the vibe that we're testing. We only want to show those extended actions when it's pinned. So nothing, but let's axe, hammer. Let's actually start with our bare hands. Okay, so it's showing it, but only sometimes. Huh, that's some weird logic. When I hover in, it shows, but when I pin it and then unpin it, it disappears. Weirdly. So I hover in and it shows, I pin it, which it should show at that point, and then I unpin it, that's when it disappears. So this is going to be like the vibe of what we're looking for here. That looks pretty correct. I'm a little concerned that it's eye pointer exiting when we're not. So I might need to toggle some like raycast targets on some stuff to make sure it's not being blocked, and make sure we have a raycast target. I think I actually did disable all of them on the tooltips, so we want to make sure that that's set. But our default should be if is pinned, don't show them. Oh, actually, if is pinned, else hide extended actions. So that should be correct. And then on our tooltip, what we'll do, why is it sized like that? Dang, oopsies. Yeah, we're gonna need to fix that, because that's the only thing our cursor is gonna raycast to. But we will add an image that is invisible, that has raycast targeting, so we can trigger that eye pointer exit when you leave that image. So what we're gonna do, let's show the whole thing. Let's build our image out to like there. How do we want to do this? Let's move this prefab around a little bit, and we've already mucked stuff up because this guy is our main prefab. So let's see if we can just apply everything that we've done and then go in and do it the right way. Alright, from here, mouse info tooltip. Cool. So what we want to do, I think, is, let's say primary action as a row. So we'll put our tool background action description and output background in that guy. And he will expand like that with a horizontal layout group. So that lets us say on this guy we can do a vertical layout group to stack them, and when he's sized correctly with a Okay, we can control the size that way. Let's make sure this, yeah, that's fine. Okay. So maybe we also had a little spacing. We'll need to come back and do some background, I think. But these things are now spaced correctly, and our extended boy is spaced correctly. This guy now is childed under this guy, which controls the height, so we probably can't do that, but I want to double check that it's still expanding. Okay, it is. Okay, so we can get rid of our content size fitter on that, which is nice. Our tooltip, though, is still only 40 pixels high. This is the guy. Can we do a content size fitter on him? We can, but we need to do something funky with the anchors. I think if we do our pivot top left, that should be fine. We had the pivot here, but that only worked because our pivot was set to the bottom left and our size was only this. But now we want our size to be the full thing, so we can't really set a pivot like in the center there, which would be pretty weird. Your mouse is here and the tooltip is up here. So we're gonna do it like that. I guess we can just always offset it a little bit, but let's decrease this spacing a little bit. And maybe we get rid of this background as well. So then we'll do a regular background across the whole thing. Let's see here. So this guy now has an image, which we can visualize. That's where the mouse cursor bounds are. If you leave that, it'll hide the tooltip. We probably will add an image to these for highlighting on mouse enter and mouse exit. Not on that guy. Tooltip. We want our raycast target here. Let's make sure we don't have any other... Yeah, everything. All the other raycast targets should be disabled, minus the buttons. But they are children, so they should take effect first. Just double checking all these. Okay, I missed one with that background, but that should be fine, and then we can apply that prefab change, so we don't need to update these because they all get refreshed anyway. Okay, I want to see if this works so far. Tooltip might be in a really weird position. No, it's fine. It's right above your cursor, which is fine. We cannot click through it because of the raycast target. So we have to like do this thing where it follows you, but you need to click before it gets there. So what we will do, mouse tooltip, we will move it over. I think that'll work. And then we can position it back when you right click. No, it does not work. We can just do the offset encode, I suppose. But actually the better thing is probably to just have that raycast target disabled all the time and only enable it when it pins. Oh, but the pinning looks really nice. That is actually a lot better. Okay. So let's do that. So let's say public image ref raycast target. So when you pin it, I'll also say .raycast target. Cool, we can modify that. Is whether or not it is pinned. So when it is pinned, it is a target. Otherwise it's not. That's perfect. Let's go back in this prefab. Let's turn it off by default. But I'm wondering if we might want our anchor down like that. Let's see how that looks. Okay, so we can click through it, good. And when we right click, right, we don't have any things on our hotbar. But if we did, we right click, and we still don't see them. What's our error? Oh, we didn't set the raycast target. Okay. So in here, blah, 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 it's actually just this image here. Coolio. Alright, once more. A little concerning that use hands is still there. I guess they are all hands, but I think that's the default. And we also get this weird case where maybe it's not clearing those rows at the beginning for some reason. But if we were to put things on, axe, hoe, fishing rod, space separately, yeah, it's not, it's on pointer exiting immediately. On the tooltip controller. So if we, yeah, it doesn't pin. Well, it does sometimes. Some weirdness afoot. And it also moves sometimes while pinned, which is weird. Oh, you know what? I bet we still have some logic for whether or not to show it or not. And it looks like, I mean, this, some weird stuff. Can't tell where the border is. Might just be something's not sized right. But going to the right is probably triggering some on pointer exits elsewhere that's hiding the tooltip. So probably in here. on mouse exit. Oh, yep. It wasn't a border of on the UI. It's the actual collider of the tree when you leave that. So we only want to do that when it's not pinned. So here, we're passing through null to close it. Let's rename this to unless pinned. And then let's say if mouse info tooltip container.is pinned, then return. We need to make that internal at least. So now it won't. This is. Oh, I see. It's a game object. Right. It's this guy. Controller, not container. Same amount of letters, dang. So now if it is pinned and we try and close it, it's not going to close. But if it isn't pinned and we try and close it, it will close. Will that cause a ton of errors everywhere else? Not errors, but like logic errors. We are going to find out. I'm also a little confused why we sometimes see use hands until it eventually overrides it. Maybe that's when the hotbar is empty. Okay, that looks way better. Okay, so if we walk over here again, we pin it, we leave the tree. Okay, now we can do the whole bar, but if we leave the tooltip now, it unpins it, but we need to actually hide it. So in here, on pointer exit, we want to set active false. And then we'll let an on pointer enter on another object show it again. Oh, let's also... no, that should be handled anyway. Okay, so that was a small change. Let's try that again though. We're getting there. Game development is so mind-blowing that you can spend so many hours doing such a small thing when there's a whole world out there, you know? Alright, so we have bare hands on this. We can click it, it's fine. Let's finish our plan. Our shade tree bark. Cool, cool. Let's put some things on our hotbar. So now if we shows that we'll use our bare hands on it, or an axe, or whatever we have. Still need to update it when we change our tool, but it's fine. We right click it here. Use hands still. We can use the whole tool tip. So if we right click again, it goes away. Come back in, it is collapsed. Okay, we're getting real close. It's a little finicky in showing again, and we still have use hands on everything. Oh, so what's happening is chaos is what's happening. We have this tree collider here. Wait, does it just have a dead zone? Wait a second. On pointer exit. We only want to do this if is pinned is true. One quick fix there, because when you move your cursor real fast, your cursor actually enters the tooltip, and then when the tooltip catches up, the cursor leaves the tooltip, which is why when we're doing this, it's just removing the tooltip occasionally. Let's test that. Let me re-go in, but we do still have one more error, I think, which might be a doozy, and that is the overlapping colliders. So what's happening is when we hover over this tree, on pointer enter is triggering for that tree to show this tooltip. That on pointer enter does not trigger again until we've left the tree and re-entered it. However, when we're showing the tooltip and we right click to pin it, and then we leave the tooltip while remaining on the tree, we've now hidden the tooltip, and on pointer enter for the tree isn't going to fire again until we leave and re-enter the tree. So maybe when we leave the pinned tooltip, what we do is just unpin it. I think that'll handle all the cases. We don't necessarily need to disable it, because the tree itself can disable it unless we removed that. No, it's still there. On mouse exit. Okay. We just kind of short-circuited it if the tooltip is pinned. Okay, that's fine. There's still going to be an edge case there, but let's see it for ourselves, I guess. Okay, so now we are on pointer exit. We're only unpinning the tooltip. We're not hiding it. So if we go back in, we enter the tree. Tree's on pointer enter fires. We now pin it. We can interact with all this stuff. If we leave this while still in the tree, you should, I mean, it is obviously unpinned, but, oh right, we need to hide extended actions manually. Okay, let's try that. But I think what might happen, let's see if we can get this bug to happen. Alright, so we got a tooltip with blah blah blah, back to the tree, it's fine, blah blah blah, off the tree, also fine. If we have these guys in the background, we go straight to them. Yeah, it's a little funky because, so the shade tree's on pointer enter fires. We're now pinning it. When we leave this to go to that tree, it unpins it and also fires that tree's on pointer enter at the same time as this tree's on pointer exit, I think. So it's gonna show it for just a second and then hide it. And that wouldn't be much of a problem if you could just wiggle your mouse a little bit and get it back, but you have to actually leave the tree and come back to get the cursor. So if we went over like this, still don't have a tooltip there unless you leave and come back. But we are getting more into those edge case diminishing returns when we want to be moving fast on stuff. So let's see. If there's a quick fix, I might do it. If not, we might come back to it another day on like a bug fix day. Let's see here. It's probably fine for now. It's nice that we can pen things. Maybe there's just there's something wrong with the hitboxes there anyway. Unless I broke something with the tooltip. Oh, okay, it's unrelated to what we're doing here. But if I come in from this birch tree and go over to that birch tree, sometimes it doesn't show. But sometimes it does. Is it related to the speed of my mouse somehow? It does seem like when my mouse is faster, it doesn't. I bet what's happening is the on pointer exit is firing because my mouse is entering the tooltip. Because we're not managing that ray cast. Let's also disable that. Alright, so that should be good enough. That's another quick little fix for a really tiny edge case. We need to figure out why use hands gets shown ever. So in the case that you right click, that's the only time we're showing the extended actions. Oh, and it's because we're not calling show extended actions. Obviously. So yeah, this shouldn't actually be here. If we move this logic, which computes all the extended actions, up here, so if is pinned show them, that's gonna do it for also the NPCs and panel triggers. But what I think we want to do instead, this guy, we actually just want to call this populate extended actions for all other tool belt options, and then don't show it here. We'll just show it when you right click to show it. And that lets us populate those values. And let's say in start, we'll clear all the extended actions stuff, just so if the first tooltip that you see is a workbench and you right click it to pin it, it's not going to have any default stuff that we've left in. that just lets us leave some around here just so we can work in the editor a little bit nicer, but these will all get deleted as soon as the game loads. Okay, so that should all work. Let's double check that, but the last thing that we want to do is get clicking on an action to go do that action with that tool. So right click. Well, that ain't right. It's pinning. Oh, right. Do we need things on our bar? Okay. Yeah, that seems fine. And I think I will move it on the y-axis a bit more so you have more padding going down too. A little jarring, but I think this is good-ish. Okay. And then for like the stash, well, that shouldn't have populated those. Does it do it on NPCs as well? It does. I mean, is that bad? I mean, I guess using an axe on an NPC does sound fun, but we don't have the logic for actually handling that. So let's figure out why that's the case. Oh, because it's populating it when we hover over the tree, and we're never clearing it again when we're hovering over other things. So public void clear extended actions. We take this guy, we bring it back down, clear extended actions. Wow. We put that in there. We also call it here. Let's just call it clear existing extended actions. And then for all these guys, we just clear, 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 and then at the very end for all of them, I mean, we don't necessarily need to hide them because they should already be hidden based on our on pointer exit. What's this one? No. Nor. Cool. So now we should only get the extended actions on trees and stuff and not workbenches and NPCs. Let's make sure. So blah blah blah. Yeah, we're not gonna get anything because we don't have anything on our hotbar. But it is kind of nice to be able to like pin it in place, I guess, if you want. But if we put a few more things on, now we can do that. If we right click on this, it's still just pinned. Same with NPCs. Cool, that's fine. And that, I think those will make a little bit more sense, and also the case where you have nothing on your hotbar when we also add like spells and abilities and also just like generic move to this position or something. I think that's nice because you might want to like go to this thing you see in the distance. You just right click it and say go here instead of having to manually go there, I guess. We'll see. It's a little odd that the output thing is just a little gray box because we are drawing that background image on the tooltip now, but disabling the container. So I think I actually will make the whole tooltip background clear. But everything is working. If we go here, let's put some stuff back on our bar, and then we click one of the options. Use hammer. Doesn't do a single thing. So glad we tested that before assuming it would work, but let's make this fully transparent. 2, this guy, it's because he doesn't have an image thing. So let's give him an image that is also transparent, which means that it's not going to show the cool little fade effect when you click on it, I think. But that'll be fine. The raycast target on it, we need it on. I don't think it's going to be a problem unless hovering over it is going to block the raycast to the parent thing and close the tooltip. So we need to test that. But you have to have the raycast target on if we want to be able to click on this and catch that click. So we'll see. Let's apply that. Apply it all. Let's see if our click event works now. So it's an acorn and an axe, I guess. Okay, it's good that the tooltip is not closing when we're hovering around, because these now have raycast targets on them. Use axe. Using tool axe on oak tree. Using tool acorn on oak tree. So we also actually want to do it on this top one as well. So do we just add like, oh, I guess we can just add a button that calls something on the action, primary action as well. We'll do that separately, but they probably could be the same logic. It's just a different design, really. Or do we want to unionize them now and just call this interaction trigger menu or something? Yak shaving. Edit script. Where's our editor? If we rename this to interaction trigger menu controller, I would hope that this logic is very, very similar to what's going on with my line endings. This logic, or this logic. Is it? Tool image, action text, output. It's missing just the action description bit. Target text. But I think, what if we just do a little bit of this? And so now on our primary action, we can give it a action or an interaction trigger menu controller thing. In our tooltip controller, we can just go get that. Could say even public interaction trigger menu controller primary action controller. Can we just say primary action controller dot load data? our active tool, and our entity, interactable object. So that should now, let's make sure, let's bring over our bare hands joy. So grab that, tool, can now use tool name, and let's make sure there's no other logic we're missing. Image, output image, right, that's the same. Easy peas. Output image container is on. Cool. Does this handle that? Maybe it should. Maybe not. I mean, it probably should eventually, but it doesn't need to. Because we're just using those actions for... Ooh, well, you know, it kind of needs to, because we're going to replace all these as well, I think. So really, the things we're replacing are that. Don't necessarily need to replace that. So it's always going to have an output for interactable objects. NPCs we'll do a little branching here based on whether it's an NPC or object or workstation to customize the text. We can also do the same sort of thing of just disabling the output container, I suppose. Which I guess we are already doing. So we can replace that as well. So we can go ahead and say, let's kind of split screen this. This is what we are pulling from, moving the logic into here. So we cover the target name text now, if it's set, which it will be, for the primary action, of course, but not these guys. So we can remove that. We can get rid of that because it's handled in here now. Let's do our switch on the action text formatting. Let's say if entity is generic interactable world object, then we do this. And else if entity is an NPC, we have talk to. Else if we have this guy. Just do this. Cool. So that covers this. This. Tool image. Yeah, I guess we need to do a little bit more. Just basically moving all our branches over here. So tool image for an object is our actual tool. Tool image dot sprite for a NPC is gonna be same logic. So we'll actually get rid of these guys as well. Basically, I'll just shoving it down into a more specialized controller instead of handling everything from the parent controller. Separating out those responsibilities. And this parent controller will just be for showing and hiding it and then loading in data. Let's see. Default talk to sprite. Down here we got tool image dot sprite is default workstation use sprite. Actually, this full on thing. Okay, we moved this, moved that. Output image container also handled, so we can get rid of that. We actually can just always clear the extended actions, so we don't even need that. And I think we can just do that, and then in our load data, we can say if it's the interactable world object, then we will load those extended actions as well. Maybe not. Right, because this is just a single line. This is what's building the menu of lines. So we only do that for world objects, so we will do that only for world objects. Cool. So we've certainly cleaned this up. We've made this horrible. But we can clean that up in a second. This should be nice and correct still, though. But we can get rid of all these things we no longer need. And this method is more for, or this class just handles position of the tooltip, pinning the tooltip, and then populating the data of the tooltip. Each line is handled by this class, so you click on it and it does the stuff that that line says. Let's see here. Cool. I think this can be cleared out. We'll need to set some references on this guy in a second, but I want to clean them up a little bit. Alrighty. Let's rig all that back up to actually work. Primary action controller is going to be that guy. Cool. So this guy now needs all this jazz. Tool image, action text, target text, output image, output container, default codec sprite of book. Workstation, we used crafting. Talk to was social. Cool. Make sure these are all good. Crafting and social. Target text is null because we have no target on that, which is correct. Is that everything? Apply the prefabs so they get instantiated correctly. Does this have that? That does. Alright, so if this all worked, then nothing should have changed. Okay. Still pins. Gotta put some stuff on our hotbar. So, cool, we can do stuff. Using scythe on campfire, using bucket on campfire. We need an image on the primary action because it doesn't have a raycast target right now, but I bet that'll work. Oh, we also never added the button itself. Something is wrong. Our tooltip did not go away as it should have. On pointer enter triggers here. On pointer exit of the campfire has now triggered. And then when we leave this tooltip, we're just unpinning it. So it's still on, but not over an object. So we should have disabled it. So there's some tweaking to be done there, but let's go get our button. Primary action needs a button. It also needs an image so it can have a raycast target. Let's make sure it's sized correctly. It does have a width of 0, which seems incorrect. Maybe this guy can control width as well. Okay, that's fine. So we want this image to also be invisible, but we do want it to be a raycast target. Coolio. This guy, the button is on click menu item. So we'll do the same here. On click menu item. Let's double check that that is what we expect it to be. On click menu item. Cool, cool. But in terms of unpinning, I think the correct solution is to, when we have generic interactable world object or whatever it is, when we on mouse exit, this guy is passing through that it's null to close the tooltip. We need to capture that somehow to know that, like, oh, the tooltip should be closed if it's not pinned, and then after we close the pin, we should be checking that flag of like, has it left the object or has it not left the object? So target info bar controller, that seems like a fine place, but maybe we can store it on the actual tooltip itself. So here, let's just do a little, this guy, internal bool has left object, or currently over object. There's still more edge cases of like, if we set this false when you leave an object, but in doing so you hover over a new object, you really need to be setting this back to true. So we'll just use this to kind of capture that state. And so here, when we do set mouse tooltip information of this or null, we will pass through mouse info tooltip controller dot currently over object is false or true, and so that'll give us a flag down on our unpinned logic on pointer exit. We can say if not currently over an object, then we hide the tooltip. If we are currently over an object still, then we leave the tooltip shown. So there's 2 or 3 cases we need to test for there. Alrighty, so tooltip shows and hides correctly. Normally, we put stuff on our hotbar, obviously. We see all those when we pin it. When we leave the pin, we're still on the tree. It just hides the stuff. And we get our tooltip still shown. If we pin it, leave the tree, and then leave the tooltip, it should hide the tooltip. It does. But I worry we're about to see another edge case of if we pin it, leave the tree, and then re-enter the tree. Alright, so to fix that, we now need to make sure that currently over object, is that being set here? It is, yeah, it is. But it's not firing again because we're blocked by the tooltip that we're showing, because we're making it a raycast target here. So when we leave the tree and then re-enter the tree, that's not firing that on pointer enter because the tooltip itself is blocking the raycast target. But now, when we leave this tooltip, we're already on the tree. So on pointer enter is only going to fire on this like edge of the objects. It's not going to fire in the middle, so we're not getting a tooltip there. But I think that is the point where it is such an edge case of you click on an object, you pin it, then you leave the object and you return to the object and you mouse out. You'll need to hover over that object again. That seems fine for now. I think even if you leave it, return, and then unpin, yeah, it works just fine there. It's literally just when you leave it, return, and mouse out onto the object. And probably, yeah, it's the same for stuff in the background as well, because same reason obviously, but it's fine, I think. For the most part it works, like 90% of the time it works, and when it doesn't work you just hover over something again, which is a little annoying, but you know, beta. We can fix that later. We just want to get the game fun. We don't need to worry about that all the time. That being weird UI bugs. Cool. So using tool hammer, using tool axe, using tool scissors. Alright, all of our actions are now hooked up to trigger. Now finally, the last thing that we want to do is do that interaction. So on our interaction trigger menu controller, when you click on an option to use a tool on a thing, it's going to act very similarly to when you on mouse down on the thing itself. We just want to change your tool to whatever the tool selected is, and then do this. And this is, if you're too far away to interact with it, go to it. If you are not too far away to interact with it, interact with it. We just want to call that from our tooltip. I wonder if we can just call on mouse down directly, as if the player had clicked on it. I mean, alternatively, we can literally do this, or call entity.interact. Maybe we just do that. Alright, here's what we're going to do instead. Public void trigger interaction from player input. All of this, easy peas. When you click on an object, it will trigger an interaction from player input. When you click on a menu item to interact with an object, it will trigger interaction from player input. So, over yonder, all we're going to do is delete everything. Data entity.trigger interaction from player input. And I guess that needs to be shoved up to generic interactable entity. That's fine. They all have an interact method. Okay, interaction range, also global. Set destination and interact. Cool, cool, cool. Alright, so now all we gotta do here is switch our active tool to the clicked tool, and then trigger an interaction on this entity. Alrighty, so for that is not gonna work, but it's probably what we want. So let's go look at our player database. Tool belt controller. Do we have a set active item? Set active slot. Now that's interesting. Although we're not storing the slot ID anywhere. And we probably need to use the slot, because if we say switch to the axe and you have 2 axes on your inventory or on your hotbar, I mean, I guess we can just switch to the first one. What happens when you say switch to hammer and you don't have a hammer on your hotbar? I guess nothing happens. Let's do that. Public void set active slot by item name. String item name. Find the slot with this item name. If item is not equal to null, that also should be if slot manager dot has item dot empty contains item. So go through each inventory slot in the tool belt, grab the slot manager. I think that's actually how we store it. It's a little funky, but that's fine. If that slot has an item, and if that item is named the item we're looking for, then we set our active slot to that slot. Perfect. All right. Will set active slot also update our HUD? Probably not. So we'll do that as well. Set active slot by item name. Redraw our tool belt HUD. That was so close. HUD controller. What do we have here? It's probably UI references dot tool belt controller, I think. Let's go hunt it down, I suppose. Alrighty. We've got our hotbar menu. Within there we've got our tool belt body, which is our tool belt controller container. We do probably have a redraw in here. Set active slot. Oh, dope. Alright, this will already do it. When we call set active slot, it is setting the active slot and showing the highlight on that slot. Cool. We don't have to do a thing. So back over yonder. Don't gotta do none of this. We just switch our active tool belt slot to the selected tool. And then trigger an interaction. Might just work. Just might. Gotta put stuff on my hotbar. Can't imagine there's many cases in the game where your hotbar would be empty, except at the very beginning, and you probably wouldn't know about pinning toolbars and stuff. So, not too worried about that. Alright, so we have axe selected. If we click axe, it's doing it. We do still need to hide the tooltip though, when you select an option, but it did indeed do it. So if we go over here and try it with hammer, we're gods at code. There are still raycasts active on this tooltip though, because I can no longer click on the tree. Alright, so there's a bug in there somewhere, but these are just left over because we harvested 190. How fast does that tree go? Alright, let's try mortar and pestle. No, let's try scissors. So it switches to scissors immediately, and then There's a weird delay before you start running, but I think it's fine. What are we getting from here? Oh my god, it's so fast. Huh. Okay. What? What? Is it still going? It is. Oh, you know what? I wonder if calling that, interact method directly kind of short-circuited some logic we have around timing. If we try an axe on this guy, is it gonna give us a bazillion things immediately, or is it a problem with that tree not having a interaction time? Yeah, I think that tree just doesn't have a interaction time. Okay. That looks more legit. These are gonna go forever because we got 200 of them all at once, but that seems fine. The things we need to change are we need to close the tooltip when you select an option. Did we go to the bush? Thought we went to the campfire. Let's go try that again. I think they were lined up like that, yeah. So if oh yeah, I might have just selected the bush. Let's try the campfire. Axe on campfire. Okay, it actually did it. Okay, mortar and pestle. Okay, it did interrupt the other one to start the new one, which is what I was worried about. Alright, so, no, it didn't. There's just 2 harvests going on for both of them using... oh my golly. By golly. I don't think I've ever broken something this much. Alright, well, that's fine, I guess. There's some weird things going on. But let's go ahead and say hide this tooltip. Is that the whole tooltip? No, that's just the menu item. Yeah, we can do that. On our menu controller, that's not gonna be great. Yeah, let's just do it. We'll say public mouse tooltip controller parent tooltip controller, and then with that we say parent dot hide dot game object dot. I actually probably want to add a like die method. Split this out a little bit. Is pinned as false. So clear tooltip, we want to unpin, and also do this. So in here we just say clear tooltip. Not sure there was a point to split those into two methods, but that's fine. Unpin tooltip, and if currently over object, let's see, clear tooltip. So the case where it's not pinned and you exit still seems fine. Let's see here. So where were we? We select a thingamabob parent dot clear tooltip. And we always want to hide it, even if it's currently over an object. Okay, that is correct. Okay. I feel like there were other bugs. Oh right, yeah, the horrible ones. All right, let's try. Let's go look at this tree, see if it actually has a harvest time. So this guy, base harvest time is 1 second. Okay, there's some funky stuff afoot then. All right, interact. So we probably need to be like killing any existing coroutines, but it feels like we're triggering interact a bunch of times instead of interact being wrong. So I'm going to add some debug. So start interaction. So when we do is currently interacting. probably should be using that. But start interaction with on the player controller. We show the interaction bar. We begin the interaction with. Do we have reset interaction? Oh, that's like a redo afterwards. End interaction. So that'll stop the interaction coroutine. So I think, just to be safe, we want player database dot instance dot end interaction. Where were we just at? Target info bar controller. Interesting. So it's our UI controller that's handling a little bit more than it should, handling the actual collection of resources, because it's triggered based off when the UI little minigame completes. Let's see here. That's fine for now. We can go ahead and just say UI references, you know, maybe begin interaction with should just automatically clear any existing interaction in progress. No, that's not going to work because this is where we show the interaction bar, and then clearing it is just going to hide it immediately. But if we allow this next line to go through, we lose any reference to an existing coroutine that might still be in progress. So I think what we want to do is just, before we override this with a new coroutine, let's just stop anything that might still be running. Okay. So I don't know exactly if we'll be able to replicate that bug, but we'll try. Might have been from me just like mass clicking on stuff while waiting for things to happen. But let's try a normal interaction with just our bare fists. Oh, right. We added... Oh, okay. That's fine. Load data is trying to set this image. So we'll do that. Because, yeah, it wants to add the tool image. It's just erroring. Output image, though. One sec. Let's make sure that output image reference didn't get clobbered. Oh, right, we never set this, which we need to do programmatically. Let's see. When we create our actions. I guess this guy can be set manually, but when we create our extended actions, we need to set that as well. So that's how we'll get a reference back to the tooltip that is showing this menu. And then, yeah, we want to make sure that this prefab has target text is null, but the rest of it is fine. Raycast target is on, that's fine as well. Let's try this once more. I guess that should be off by default, but it's no problem. Alright, so we use our bare hands on this bad boy. Shade tree branch. Are we getting a bazillion of them? No, we're getting a reasonable amount. Okay. Pinning doesn't do nothing. Okay. Let's do axe, hammer, spade, scythe. We'll try right up next to the tree. Let's try hammer. So it's just going to immediately interact. Will we get a bazillion items now? No. Okay. So if we go far away, we're on the hammer now. Let's try using a spade. Okay. If we change our items, I mean, there's still the bug we need to fix separately of interacting. You need to interrupt any interactions when you change your tool. Okay. Starting to fill out the things you get. Let's use an axe on it. It's a little weird that it doesn't like face you to the object. Like, it feels like the movement is a little bit weird. Shade tree logs, shade tree wood. Okay. And yeah, we want to move the tooltip y-axis a little bit down too. Okay. So we didn't replicate the bug, but maybe that'll be a fun Easter egg for somebody to find. Alright, so it seems like it's working. If we were to interact with something way off in the distance, maybe it's stalling because of pathfinding? And there is one weird thing, which is more, I don't know if it's a bug or not, but if we have the axe selected here, we actually have a recipe for birch logs. You get birch logs when you use it on an axe tree. If we select scythe, it's going to change our active tool to scythe and then run us over. But if we switch it back to axe while we're running over, it's probably just going to use the axe, right? That seems correct, right? Because a player might want to change their mind about what item they're using. You wouldn't want, like, oh man, I meant to use axe, and then you switch to axe and it still uses scythe, I think. Not entirely sure, but I feel like that's the case. Maybe that's something we wait and see if playtests point anything out. But cool, it looks like everything is working. It's a much better interaction system, I think. Both in terms of like actually interacting with stuff, but also for presenting information to the player, because there's so many items in this game. What I was seeing at least was you come up to a new object in the world, like a mossy boulder or some new flower you haven't seen before, herb or something, or even a tree, and you're like, okay, I don't know if I've seen this or not. I've probably harvested it with some stuff. I can go look up maybe what items or tools I've used on it so far, but I don't know. I don't want to dig through all that. It's nice to have this easy tooltip of, oh, my active tool is an axe. If I use an axe on this tree, I will get this item over on the right. Similarly, if I change it to other tools, you get to see the different items. But also, if you really want to see everything, you right click and see all those. Maybe we want a little bit of item tooltips on these and these, but that might get a little bit too complex. We could set it up. It might just be weird, but it might be fun. I think what I'll do is I'll see if that's an easy implementation. If it is, we'll throw it in. If it's not, I think I'll make myself some lunch and call it a stream. But let's see how hard it would be. So let's take a look at our inventory controller. That's probably a good example of how we're doing item tooltips right now. And I think it's covered by the inventory slots. And so we probably don't want to make those icons in the tooltip full-on slots, but show item tooltip just takes, we have a reusable tooltip prefab that we could create, and then we load the item data So really what we would want to do is set up on pointer enter, on pointer exit, and show item tooltip, hide item tooltip on those tool image and output image objects. I think that is fine. Like, we can probably do that pretty fast, and it might be cool. Let's start it on the output image. Let's just say item image or show item tooltip on hover. Nice little reusable script. We will steal this code here, and then we will give it a public item attribute. We will set that from the code, and it should just work. So we've got iPointer enter handler, iPointer exit handler. We will say public item. So if item is null, and we also want a public game object for that, and our shown tooltip is another one that'll be private game object shown tooltip. And again, here we can just use item. Cool. So if we deal with our prefab issues again, let's just go ahead and remove this component, go into prefab mode, and then add it in here. So let's find our prefab item tooltip. Item tooltip. We'll set the item through code, but let's copy this over as well. Tool image, paste it in, same thing. And then let's also do it for our guys over here. And output image as well. And we'll go edit the code that when we are populating that load data, we can go ahead and set that. So we will say tool image dot game object dot get component dot item is equal to tool, and we actually only do that for objects because the other ones have just icons for like conversation and crafting. Show a tooltip on. And similarly, we will show a for the output item. Same thing. Do we really not have the actual name? We'll just get it twice. Item, output item. We do one. Alrighty. So on pointer exit might not actually fire when we're closing the tooltip. But we will test that and see, because I think we can just do like a get component in children and get them all and close them. We'll see. I feel like I didn't set some references or something, but alright, axe. Use axe on oak tree. I guess we already have a tooltip here. So they should be showing. They are not. That's fine. I bet they are showing and they're just not parented correctly. So if we go back, ref tooltip. Ooh, they probably are parented correctly actually. I guess we can double check. Mostly just want to see what these nested tooltips look like. So go back in our hierarchy to tooltip parent. Yeah, they're not being created, so they should be parented there. So, oh, you know what? I bet those images also don't have recast targets. Let's inspect that. Yeah. So tool image, output image. Both of those need recasts on. And in this guy, tool image, output image, raycast on. Let's try this again. Alright, it works. I mean, obviously the codex thing needs its own like tooltip explaining what it is, but there's also a few weirdities in like the overlapping things. Oh yeah, like that. Yikes. So we probably only want to toggle those raycast targets on when it gets pinned. But that's kind of nice. I mean, they have a weird jump. I've noticed that on other item tooltips as well. Oh no, we've got a permanent tooltip as well. Oh no, they're just stacking now. Okay. Yeah, that's gonna happen when you show a tooltip like this and then go to the left, because we're disabling the object before before cleaning up, before triggering the no longer showing the tooltip. So here in our this guy, when we clear the tooltip, we want to also disable any shown tooltips with show item tooltip on hover components. Children. Cool. That looks almost good. Okay. We also want, been putting off doing this, but we want -20 on that, I think. We want to move it up. No, we want to move it down. We also want to, do we have a pen tooltip? We should. Okay, so all this. Actually, we want toggle pen tooltip for that. And here we want that. Coolio, that should be fine. But also enable the raycast targets of child image components. That's not gonna do what we want, but maybe it'll just work. It's too broad. It's just gonna enable everything, which we don't really want, but we don't want them enabled by default. So let's try this. So let's make a cool little item. Axe and a hoe. Put some other items on our hotbar. Yada yada yada. We got a cool multi-purpose farm tool, which so I think probably the raycast targets are off. So if we go to this guy, tool image, raycast target is on. Is the item set? It is. When we hover over, doesn't show nothing. What did we change that might have done that? Oh, well, one, our y coordinate is backwards. Somewhere. Minus 20. Our cursor was starting outside of it, so we actually had to mouse into it and then out of it to close the tooltip. Let's disable that by default. Let's go in. Now the pinned tooltip should be 20 pixels of border around our mouse. It is. So we take an axe, blah blah blah, a couple others. Okay. I bet what's happening is we enabled the raycasting on all the images and there's stuff blocking the actual sprites that we want. So we'll disable that. We will keep them enabled by default, and what we'll do is tweak it a little bit more. But that'll probably be the end of it. Let's try once more. Alrighty. Once more. They should work. Maybe. We'll see. Yeah, that's what was happening, is just, it was showing, it was enabling probably like the background sprites and stuff, and they were overlapping. So at least we can see those. If we were to go use the axe on the tree, we'll get an output one, so we can make sure that works as well. But, I mean, I kind of like the tooltips on it. It's kind of nice. We can go see like each of the items, what they're worth even. That's kind of a nice little perk. We probably maybe don't want to default to being hovering over the bottom image then. And yeah, we've got the permanent tooltip still. We'll need to fix that, probably off camera. I'm getting a little hungry. But yeah, I think we can just move stuff. Let's just do that real fast and say, where's our position? This guy, X of like 60 over, I think. That should get us past the image. Because I think it's a 48 by 48. And yeah, we'll still want to do a little bit of tweaking also for the raycast on them by default. The real solution is just to have a list of images that we want to toggle raycasting on and off for. And I just didn't want to do that. But, you know, I guess I gotta do that. But if we put some other stuff on our hotbar now, we can now, when we right click, we're further over and it's over the text instead of over the items. So that'll work. Cool. I think that looks pretty good. So I think we're gonna wrap up there. We can see if there's anybody else doing game development. We haven't raided in a couple weeks, but we did a lot this week, so why not? Poke around real quick. And let's see. Got someone doing Godot. Next.js. Oof. We do got JD. He's always a good one. Oh yeah, let's raid him. Let me pop us over. Does dev. Hope he's not. Oh, he's only 40 minutes in. Alright, cool. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. Stick around if you want. Pop you over to JD. He's a cool guy. I'll put my headphones on so I can hear him too. Peace.